Good morning, everybody. This is the week 9 notes. We are covering time, monochronic, and polychronic this week. There's a couple things that I wanted to go over with you before we started. The first, so next week I will be in Texas. No, yes, next week. So I'm working on this video a little bit earlier to try and get it done. So you have it next week while I'm in Texas. I'm going to try my hardest to get the week 10 stuff done, but I may not be able to do a lecture video and notes. So for 1 week, you may be on your own. I'm going to try not to do that, but I just want to let you know that there is a possibility for that because I will be in Texas all week for a job interview. Um, and you don't really get much downtime. And when you get back from your all day meeting, go, 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 the last thing you want to do is look at another computer screen. So I do apologize. I'll keep you in the loop. I'll let you know. But for the week 10, you may be on your own just for that week. And if you are, I do apologize, but it would only be for week 10. Um, just get sorry. Discussion posts are great. Y'all are doing wonderful. Um, your grades so far, I have all of them in a Google Doc that is only for me, that I'm only able to see. But if you're questioning where you're at, schedule a Zoom meeting with me. I'd be happy to meet with you and let you know where you're at. The first 5 discussion grades are on eCampus. That's the midpoint. So be sure to check that out. Yeah, I think that's it. So we're gonna go ahead and start. These 2 readings were pretty short. I think 14 pages for both of them. Um, so pretty short, and that's good. I know y'all are busy. I know you have a full-time job and going to school, which I don't think I could do that. It was hard enough just going to school. So I do commend you for that. And these readings, hopefully, were short and sweet and to the point. All right. Where's my notes at? All right, so let's start with the Hall and Hall reading from 2007. So, time is really important in the study of nonverbal communication. We talk about time, where you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be. We talk about our use of time, and all those are really important and can communicate different things. So, with monochronic, you're really only paying attention to one thing at a time. You focus on one task, you finish that, you move on. And we'll get more in depth into these, of course. These are just brief little overviews of them. And then you get polychronic. So, polychronic is being involved with many things at once. I'll make my notes a little bit bigger because I'm having trouble reading them. So, you might be a multitasker. You might have TV on in the background. You might be doing multiple things at once, right? And well, these are two that, I mean, they personally don't seem like they're related at all, and they're not. But you do typically fall into one time user over the other. So you might be a polychronic time user, or you might be a monochronic. Think about how you use your daily workday. Does your workday allow for you to be monochronic or polychronic? I know at WVU in my teaching role right now, I'm more of well, no, I'm more of a monochronic person. I try to do things one at a time. But being at WVU, it really doesn't allow for that. So I have to be a little bit more polychronic than I like when I'm at my job. And that's because that's the culture. So we'll talk about culture a little bit more when we delve into each of these, but think about, what do you prefer? And not only what do you prefer, what does your workday consist of? And what does that communicate either from you or from your employer to you? Okay. So with monochronic, it is experienced and used in a linear way. So we divide our time into segments. From 9 to 10, I'm going to work on this. From 10 to 11, I'm going to work on this. 11 to noon is lunch. Noon to 1 is this. whatever, so on and so forth. We compartmentalize our days. And this is because it helps us stay linear. We have a starting point and we have an ending point. You're not jumping back and forth in between. With monochronic time, we often talk about time as, sorry, something that is tangible. So something that can be spent, saved, wasted, or lost. Think about a time at work when your boss came up and said, I want you to spend most of your time doing this. You have all these other things going on, yes, but spend most of your time doing this. As if it's money, as if you can really throw an amount at it. All right, I'm going to throw 45 minutes this way. I mean, we can plan for that, but I don't know about you, but every time I plan to spend 45 minutes on something, I spend an hour and a half because it takes more time than I had originally planned. And of course, it's not every time, but think about how that intersects with your work life. How does that keep you in line? How does that keep you on track? And what is that communicating to you? Right. So we do talk about time as something that is tangible. And this definitely dominates the American workforce and many Western cultures as well. So England, Switzerland, Germany, Scandinavia. Think about the time that you are expected to be at work by, right? Hang on. Sorry about that. I know one of the comments on my thing was go somewhere private. I am in the room that is furthest away from everybody in my house, and you can still hear everything that is going on. My house is not well insulated. And even when I tell people, hey, I'm doing this, leave me alone, I still get interrupted. So I do apologize. I don't have, I mean, I have an office on campus, but I can't currently use it right now because there is no internet in it. My office, it's been a mess all year. So I do apologize for that. I don't mean for the interruptions, but I try to work through them. All right. So think about the time that you are expected to be at work. I know on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I teach at 12:30 in the afternoon. I am expected to be there no later than 12:30, right? But the people in my department would like it if I was there at 8 a.m. every single day, right? And what's really interesting about monochronic time now and start times is we're online a lot of the time, especially with this class. But think about your jobs. When COVID hit, were you online, at least for part of it? Did you start at 8 a.m. every single day? How did they know? Unless you physically had to Zoom in or go in, right? So COVID kind of made things a little bit different for us right now. But typically, if they want you there by 8 a.m. every single day, you don't really get to negotiate that. You can't say, well, I feel like coming in at 8:45, right? You're allowed to come in early. They love when you come in early, but you're not allowed to come in past your start time. You get in trouble. What does that communicate if you're late? What does it communicate if you leave work early? You're scheduled till 5, but you leave at 4:30. What does that communicate? What does it communicate if you start early and or leave late? So these are all things that we consider with monochronic time because we have these days segmented, compartmentalized, right? So if we're leaving late or we're starting, or not leaving late, if we're leaving early or starting late, typically communicates that we don't want to be there, we don't do a good enough job, we don't have enough focus, we don't care about our jobs. And maybe that's true, but maybe it really isn't, right? Maybe you got there late because, I don't know, you left at your normal time and there was a wreck that day. That's out of your control. Or maybe you were picking up something or meeting with a client on your way to work. You're actually doing your job, but in a little bit different way. But we have to think about how this communicates things for our employers our coworkers, and for ourselves. What does it communicate to your boss if you get there early or leave late? That you're a hard worker, you're dedicated, you're a team player, things like that. Um, if they even notice. What does it communicate to you about yourself if you get there early and leave late? That you don't care if you have a social life, you are tied to that job. And maybe that's what you want. It just depends. So these are some examples that we see in our everyday work situations. Monochronic time users typically prefer privacy over open concepts. Um, so think about private offices, higher ranking individuals. You will never see a CEO in a cubicle. It doesn't work that way, right? The higher you go, the better your office gets. So think of the more private offices and the way we have a designated start time and end time as more individualized cultures, individualistic cultures. We prefer the I over the we, right? So I'm expected to start by 8. I get there at 7:30 at the latest, right? I'm pulling myself up by my bootstraps. I'm not relying on anybody, and nobody else is besides my boss to get my work done is relying on me, right? It's the I versus the we. Okay. Next, we move into polychronic time. So, polychronic is simultaneous occurrences of many things, and this does include people. So, talking to multiple people throughout the day at one time, right? With monochronic, you're really focusing on one task, focusing on one conversation, one person. Polychronic is everything is fluid, it is moving together, it shifts around, but we go with the flow, right? The focus for polychronic time is completing human interactions rather than being engaged or meeting a specific start time or schedule, right? So if I know that I have to be at work by 9 a.m., if I know I have to be to work at 9 a.m., I might be getting ready and doing all that stuff, but rather than cutting the conversation off, I'm going to focus on finishing my conversation, even if that means I don't arrive to work until 9:30 or 10 o'clock, because my focus is that human interaction, whether it's a work related interaction or not. Okay. But think about if you're in sales. If you're in sales, isn't it most important to focus on the conversations that are currently happening so you don't have to come back to it? I'm not a salesperson by trade. I worked at an insurance company after my master's for like a month, and it was awful. Oh, it was awful. I've never quit a job so quick. It was awful for me because I don't have that sales focus, right? I don't focus on closing the interaction over the schedule. I'm a very type A. I like to have things planned and organized. And in sales, it's almost impossible to plan. So for those of you who do sales, polychronic might be more of your thing, and your work might allow for that. Absolutely. Um, so like Latin countries really opt for finishing a conversation and being late to other appointments rather than cutting off the conversation. More we cultures. Um, sorry, places in Japan, they're going to focus on that interaction rather than this time constraint. So, what would your workday look like if we were focused on the now and the conversation with people and clients over getting to our next appointment? How would that communicate, or what would that communicate to you as an employee? What would that communicate to your boss as an employer, right? Um, how would that look in an American culture? These are things that you should be thinking about from these readings. What does my day look like? What time does it typically use? How would it look if it used the opposite time? And that's really important. Okay. Um, and then opposite of the monochronic time, of course, with the polychronic time, they prefer open concepts. I don't know why I keep yawning. Um, they prefer open concepts. They believe that private space disrupts the flow of information. So the CEO has a cubicle. Your boss has a desk in the middle of the room. They don't have a closed off wall, right? Thinking about this, would communication flow easier? Would it be better or worse to have everybody have an open concept? Or is it better to have our rankings known based on the offices that we have? Again, things to think about. All right, so next we have the Kalman and Raffaelli in 2005 reading. And this article was pretty short, it was 10 pages. It was all about response times to emails. So, knowing what we know about our culture, about our time, email response was examined. I want you to take a second and stop and think about, how long does it take you to respond to an email? How long does it take your boss to respond to your email? How long does it take a professor to respond to you? And what do all of these things communicate? So, me personally, I mean, teaching is my job. Email, big part of that job. So, my responsibility is to email my students back, email my colleagues back. And typically, it's within 24 hours. I try to respond to students very quickly. I pride myself on that. Typically, it's within a couple hours. Unless I am working at my other job, typically it's pretty quick, right? Um, but that's not the case for all people. And think about how frustrated you get when you need an answer to something, but 8 hours later, you still don't have an answer. So you're at the same point you were 8 hours ago with that project, right? So the article was all about response times and emails. So the average response time was 1.2 days or 28.8 hours. What does this communicate if somebody takes a little over a day to respond to you? What does that communicate? What does that tell you about them, about the project or the task that's going on, about the conversation? And to me, my output or my outlook might be a little bit different, but I think it looks like you don't care. Even my longest emails never take me longer than 10 minutes to write. So you don't have 10 minutes to email me back. And maybe that's very harsh. Maybe it's not that they don't have the 10 minutes, but it requires some oh my goodness, information being provided to me, and that's going to take longer than 10 minutes. So they put it off until they get a chance. But 1.2 days is the average response time. It says a lot. So the majority of answers to email was about 6 hours later, however. So many people, oh, majority wasn't the right word, because the average is 1.2 days. Several answers to email was about 6 hours. Now, comparing 6 hours to 1.2 days, that's a heck of a lot sooner. We do like that a little bit more, right? But even 6 hours, what does that communicate? And maybe not that they don't care, but wow, they must be really busy if it's taking them that long. I have emailed students personally where I need something from them and I get a response a week later. Well, I can't do anything with this now. You know what I mean? If your boss, you have an important question or you have to figure something out for something that you have to turn in, right? Um, Say you've got spreadsheets. We'll go with spreadsheets. You have spreadsheets that are due by Friday at 4. Okay? Friday at 4. Today it is Monday, right? Well, I guess you don't know. You could be watching this any day. It is Monday at 10:35 in the morning. I email my boss. My boss gets back to me 6 hours later. I haven't lost too much time. I can still get a lot of work done. But if we're talking about spreadsheets, a lot of it builds off one step after the next, right? If it takes my boss 1.2 days, so I'm already at the afternoon portion of my work on Tuesday. That took a lot of time. So I've got half a day and then 3 more days to finish this. And if that's not enough time, if you needed that day and a half, you might be out of luck. Okay. All right. So there are some really nice charts about email responses as well. So about 80% of users responded to 80% of emails daily. Okay. So 80% of people are responding to at least 80% of emails. 60% of users responded to about 60% of emails daily. Still decent numbers, but with the first set, the 80 and 80, 20% of people are not, and 20% of emails go unanswered. Same with the 60 and 60. 40% of people are not responding, and 40% of emails are going unanswered. Okay. And then it jumps down a lot. So between 25 and 30% of users responded to 95% of emails daily, right? So only 5% of emails are not being responded to, but between 70 and 75% of email users aren't responding to that many emails. That's a problem. Majority of people are not responding to most emails. About 10 to 15% of users respond to 100% of emails daily. So 85 to 90% of users are not responding to all email daily. So what does this mean? People don't respond as quickly as we like necessarily. Could be due to the fact that we don't place as much value on communication as other cultures. Rather, we focus on getting our appointments made, our clients met with, and tasks completing. So email gets pushed to the end of our list because one, we're not even communicating with the person directly. Two, it's a communication thing. We need to focus on our tasks. That could be a big deal. And it's important to think about because it impacts our business and our understanding with our bosses or instructors or clients or whoever. And so it's really important when you start thinking about how does my culture use email? How does my culture use time? Does that match what I like or what I like to use? Does that impede on me doing my job and completing my job? I haven't been in the real world very long. I just graduated in May. This is my first job out of my PhD, and a lot of it's very similar to what I did during my doc school. Um, the difference is I'm not being micromanaged with my time now. So I kind of do things as I please, which is awesome. Love it. But how does my organization answer and respond to emails? How do they use time? It doesn't match how I typically use time. And that's not a problem. But that shows me that I probably wouldn't last here long term because how I use time is very important to me because it's a big part of my personality. Again, that's just my experience. That's what I do. That's how I am. You might be okay with switching back and forth. Nothing wrong with that. Um, it's all based on your preference. But time does communicate a lot, and it can communicate negative things or positive things, depending on how you're using it and how your boss or work prefers you use it. All right, so that's all I have on these notes on time. If you have any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to reach out. All right, have a great week. Best of luck on your discussion posts. Bye.